God, please, no! 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 No!
Hola y bienvenidos a la sesión informativa del fin de semana de NASCAR. Soy tu anfitrión, James.
Let's talk Pocono, you know, the place for honeymooners.
What the hell is wrong with you guys?
Look, we just trying to relax a little bit, trying to get along. Why can't we all just kind of get along?
Pocono, oh, it's a tricky track. It looks like a tater tot, modeled after 3 different racetracks. Might have 6 turns. Honestly, if you look at other maps, it probably has like close to 20. It's an interesting track on the NASCAR schedule. Pops up twice. It used to be a 500-mile endurance, challenger during the summer. Always a great event for fans to kind of like go to this like really nice area of the country and just enjoy like just nature around racing. And it's a really cool track because they do a lot to offset the emissions of a sport and discipline that honestly just really destroys the planet.
The power is yours!
It's a track where straightaways are important. And with a very high downforce package that punches big holes in the air, straightaways are going to produce drafting, big packs, 4, maybe 5 wide racing. I don't know, the track is wide enough for it. So let's kind of get into it. For starters, if you didn't get the hint at the beginning of the video, I watched this race in Espanol.
Scroll down to Spanish and push select.
I watched on Fox Deportes, and I thought the coverage was great. It was interesting. I watched on Fox Deportes for a few different reasons. First off, I wasn't able to restart the race on the normal broadcast from the Fox Sports app, the Fox Now app, or even the Fox Sports Go app. Could watch the live race, but I jumped in about 2 hours after the coverage started, so I did not want to. I wanted to enjoy the whole race. 2, Pocono is not typically an entertaining race. If you're a die-hard NASCAR fan and you really get into the dynamics of pit strategy and fuel mileage and cycles and just off-sequence kind of racing, Pocono's awesome. If you're a casual fan, the restarts are amazing. That's all I got to say about Pocono. There was this opportunity to make the race more interesting, and I thought watching it in Spanish would make it more interesting. The Spanish broadcast has a 2-person booth, which is really nice to see, with Jesse Laceta as kind of like a lap-by-lap announcer. Rodolfo Landros, analysis guy. I liked it. I thought they were entertaining. They brought a lot of energy. It's, even though I don't really speak Spanish, I am Spanish, but I don't speak it. I can understand it though. So I really got the gist of the race. And normally when I'm watching the telecast, I'm just waiting for, Mike Joy and Jeff Gordon and Darrell Waltrip to kind of catch up to what I've already analyzed in the situation. Having, every bit of information being fed to me wasn't that important. And also, it's interesting to hear how, a lot of things are translated into Spanish. A lot of things are English words that are just translated right back into kind of an English dialect because there's really no way to translate it into Spanish other than saying it in its formal English, pronunciation. Like the driver names, which I thought all the announcers did an amazing job of saying the driver's name. Harvick, Boyer, Suarez. I was like, oh shit, man. Hyping up everything, You kind of perked up when you heard a name, so it was really cool. It was like a trigger, which was great. But one part of the broadcast that I felt like suffered was the fact that it was only a 2-person broadcast and you had 0 pit road commentating going on. There was no context to what was going on as far as like pit road. To many fans, you can allude to it as United States F1 coverage. You have a simulcast that's a feed that's not being edited to your specific needs, and then you only have the announcers watching this feed and only can call what is being presented to them via the feed. So it's understandable, but the coverage was still amazing. I mean, yeah, you lose a little bit of the pit road stuff, but if you're really watching the race and you can analyze it, feel like looking at the screen. You're like, oh man, you can tell that car is loose, you can tell that car is really tight, or I don't know. I thought it made the race way more interesting. So let's get to the race. It was a typical Pocono race. I know a lot of people were probably just like expecting something crazy, but you know, with this package, I feel like the package is great to a certain point. Once you get it to a track that's so big,
That's what she said.
Oh, no, not that. Just come on.
it's great for, you know, mid-pack racing, but the leaders are always going to get strung out, and it's always going to be a clean air game. If you have clean air around you, you have the most downforce on your car, you're going to check out. And though there were the dominant cars of the race, there were a lot of times when things became off sequence, and cars who would just get the lead could actually assert themselves and really, you know, work on making their cars better, or just even just flexing their dominance and projecting themselves out in the lead. Kyle Larson was able to do this, Brad Keselowski, Kyle Busch, Martin Truex Jr. You know, a lot of those drivers, once they got the lead, they were like pretty assertive with it. Clint Bowyer as well. So the thing about this kind of racing is just, it's great when there's the ability for a lot of air to be broken. At Pocono, there isn't. You know, there's always these little pockets of air wherever there's packs of racing happening. It's just Pocono. I did like the green flag runs though, and I think that's another thing people don't like, because as I've said before, it's a restart package, and when there's not a lot of restarts, there's not a lot of, you know, action happening with this package. So I do like green flag racing though. I like when you have pit stops and you have cycles and strategy comes into play, and it becomes a little bit of a fuel mileage game, and how many stops do you not want to make, because this has already been planned out, but the variables of how the race plays out affects how they have a lot of engineers and car chiefs and crew chiefs, you know, fix that strategy. So it's really cool to see that play out. But as far as dominance, man, Joe Gibbs Racing, this race had probably the most dominant cars. All four cars were great, but parts issues did plague the 19 team. They did have that engine failure, which was a bummer, because Martin Truex Jr. was actually asserting himself to be one of the most dominant cars of the race at that point, and then things just kind of went catastrophic. It was good to see Denny Hamlin kind of having a great run. Obviously, it's an amazing track for him, but he's kind of been feast or famine. Either he's winning and being successful, or he's just a field filler at Pocono, which is weird, but it was good to see them. The 11 team had a good run, as well as Eric Jones. Eric Jones really asserted himself in this race as being one of the premier guys at Joe Gibbs Racing. I know there's like always been this rumor whether it's like Hamlin or Jones that's gonna like be out next for Bell, because Bell has got to come up and be in Cup, and there's a path and whatnot. Well, you know, we can't cast Eric Jones aside just because he has like a couple bad runs. I mean, Eric Jones proves that he's great, and he did a good job this weekend. As we were saying before, there was a lot of green flag runs, and towards the end there was a very long green flag run, and you thought that there was going to be an interesting result list because of that, shuffling because of strategy. Unfortunately, there was a late race caution. Another great restart. All race long, the restarts were amazing. I mean, it's easy to highlight that. It added some excitement, but honestly, it was just a typical Pocono race, because either it's green flag run to long green flag run to the end with some fuel strategy that makes things interesting, or it's just a long green flag run to the end and the two most dominant cars are there to battle it out, or there's a late race caution and then there's a shuffling restart, and once the restart is over, whoever gets the lead basically wins. That's what happened this race. So I mean, it was pretty typical, but I think watching it in Spanish made it way more entertaining, way more enlightening. I'm definitely going to try to do it again. I might do it next weekend, because I thought the post-race coverage was great too. Yeah, you had the dumb gimbal victory on the front straightaway, but other than that, the post-race coverage kind of kept going and going and going as long as it did, and I'm pretty sure it might have as well on the English side, but I don't know, I felt like the announcers just kind of kept breaking stuff down and kept talking and analyzing the race, and it allowed me to like learn a little more, you know, get some more context as far as what words they're saying, and I thought it was a great tool to just learn a little bit of Spanish. You know, I'm still a rookie, sure I got my yellow stripes, but you know, maybe I'll learn more, and maybe it'll help me, you know, so I can enjoy some more Spanish coverage, because I think the Spanish culture of NASCAR is really interesting. You know, we're subjected to totally different ads during the broadcast. You know, like I said, it was kind of like a live stream that was just flipped over to the Spanish commentators, and they had audio control for commentating. But even still, like, you know, the intro segments, a lot of those moments where they cut back to the people in Charlotte at the FS1 studio, they don't have that. There's no, like I said, no pit road officiating. There's no translator for when there is an interview at all. The translation mainly happens when, I'm assuming it was Jesse, speaks up and he kind of like gives context to what has been said by a driver or what has been said by the interviewer to enlighten the audience. But other than that, I feel like there's some work that could be done on it, and it could make it stronger. I feel like Fox could have the opportunity to have probably one of the strongest Spanish broadcasts for NASCAR in North America. There is a big audience with the, you know, Spanish market, and, you know, it's a room for improvement. You know, I think it's a great broadcast, so I truly enjoyed it, and it made a What's So race interesting and great. And another thing too about this race, it's Pocono, and I like that it's 400 miles, and it won't be 400 miles anymore. It's going to be like a doubleheader next year, and that's great. We'll change it up, but, you know, fans, I get it, you didn't like it, but we can't ask for too much change after next year, because as a true diehard fan, we all know
too much change is not a good thing. That's the climate.
And with that, let's jump into my top 5. That's where I talk about 5 drivers that you should have taken note of during the Pocono 400. First driver on the list, Erik Jones. Erik Jones, that's right. Talk about that Jones boy. Because we're all just kids from somewhere, aren't we? And he's running really well. I think that was probably his best finish at Pocono 3rd. He's had consistency throughout the last 2 races he was there. I think he had 2 6th place finishes. So great job for Erik, kind of improving on that status, but really good to bounce back off of finishing dead last in the Coke 600. He bounced back and proved that he was one of the strongest Joe Gibbs Racing's car. At points, he was faster than Kyle Busch. So, you know, he's inserting his name in the conversation as far as like, hey, if we're going to be, you know, talking about who's the strongest Joe Gibbs Racing car, don't forget about the 20. So let's hope to see some consistency out of the 20 car. Daniel Hemrick. Daniel Hemrick had his best finish not on a plate track, 13th. His best cup result so far that has literally not been on a plate track. Probably his best finish before that was 17th, and it was probably at like Richmond. So Hemrick pulling through, and he had a great run. He was like in the top 10, and if the last caution probably didn't come out and, you know, things were going to cycle through the way they were, he could have finished top 10, maybe even like, you know, 11th. But honestly, with the way everything played out, for him to come home 13th, strong run for that rookie. That's what he needs to be doing, is just getting, you know, top 15s, progressing into the top 10, finishing these races, because it's really been feast or famine for Hemrick. He's either finishing in the top 20 maybe, or he's just not finishing at all. So good run for Daniel Hemrick. Hopefully we'll see some more improvement from him. William Byron is on a roll, okay? In the last 4 races, he's got 3 top 10 finishes, which is great. And, you know, it's showing consistency. We haven't really seen a lot of consistency out of William Byron in his short Cup career. In his short career in NASCAR in general, we saw dominance from him in the Trucks and Xfinity series. Going into the Cup series, you know, you don't expect to see that. This year, his new crew chief, Chad Knaus, has probably given him a lot of knowledge and insight to be a better driver. And it's showing. You know, he's won the last 2 poles. He's got 2, you know, top 10 finishes back to back, 3 in the last 4 now. He's starting to show some consistency and show that, you know, Hendrick Motorsports has strength, you know, through the depth of the organization. And this could be good. This could be good for Hendrick. It could be really good for William Byron. We'll see how the summer stretches out for him. Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch won this race. Kyle Busch probably had the most dominant car. Like we said last week, who's going to be the most dominant Joe Gibbs Racing car? The 18 or the 19? Right now, 18 up. Last week it was the 19. What's going to happen in Michigan? I don't know. But it's going to be exciting to watch. At number 5, the People's Champ, Matt DiBenedetto. Matty D. Yeah, he came home 17th. Yeah, you might be asking yourself, why am I celebrating somebody who finished 17th. Well, somebody stopped the bleeding a little bit for Matt DiBenedetto. He didn't get off to a great start for his weekend. They had an engine problem and they had to swap engines and he didn't get a lot of track time and he had to start in the back. So yeah, at one point I think he was tweeting that he was watching like the Xfinity race from like 2 years ago to see how the aero package was back then and how they were running. Yeah, that's how that guy trained. He spun out too in the race, came back, and still ended up with a 17th place finish. So strong, showing that you just don't give up. And Matt DiBenedetto didn't give up. They got through Pocono. Let's see what they got in Michigan. Hopefully the Levine family racing team can continue the success. Maybe 2 top 20s back to back. Get some, momentum going. It's just about putting the races together, and hopefully Matt DiBenedetto and that team can prove some people wrong. And that was my top 5. I hope whoever you were watching this weekend had a decent result. And finally, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Xfinity Series. I wanted to make this more about my experience watching the race in Spanish and Pocono in general. The Xfinity race from start to finish was just breathtaking because you never knew who was really going to win. You knew that there were the 3 dominant cars of Christopher Bell, Cole Custer, and Tyler Reddick, who were all on 3 totally different agendas the entire race. Tyler Reddick was coming from the back, going to the front. Christopher Bell had a problem. He spun out, had to, bounce back from that issue. Cole Custer would get trapped in traffic in the back and mid-pack, and he would have to battle his way back up. It was really awesome to watch those guys. I don't know, the Xfinity Series just has this excitement for me. I mean, you look at the last lap. Going in the last corner, you didn't know who was going to win. And then all of a sudden, Tyler Reddick just drove it in a little too hard. Then again, on that initial restart, he really was tucked up under Cole Custer going into turn 1 and just like perfectly just, I don't know. It was an amazing race. This has been the weekend debrief. Awesome weekend at Pocono, okay? Guys and gals, watch the race in Spanish. It's enlightening. I enjoyed it. Next is Michigan. I always enjoy Michigan. I have had the privilege to go to Michigan once in my life. It's a really great track. Always entertaining race to watch, especially if it comes down to fuel mileage kind of thing. I don't know if it will. We'll see. How will the package play out? Will high downforce be good or bad at the world's fastest speedway? And how many fans will complain about the speed? Because speed is irrelevant, remember? Didn't we hit on this in Atlanta? Oh man, we're going to talk about speed next week. And we're not talking about that awesome Keanu Reeves movie.
For LA cop Jack Traven, the game began when someone put the city of Los Angeles to the ultimate test. Now, he's the only solution. Keanu Reeves, Dennis Hopper, Sandra Bullock. Get ready for Rush Hour.